right here. What an awesome pass through the slot, onto the stick of Batherson. Kachuk in tight up, let's get going, scores! Brady Kachuk wins it in overtime for Ottawa.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined with the voice of the Ottawa Senators since the beginning of the franchise, Dean Brown. Welcome to the show. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you on.
Well, pleasure to be on, Brandon. Thanks for asking.
Well, firstly, you've been the Senators play-by-play voice since the beginning. Why don't you just walk us through your journey and your legendary career to where you're at today?
Oh boy, that goes back a long ways. Yeah. Well, I started in broadcasting by accident. When I was grew up in Manitoba, and when I was playing junior football, I got interviewed by a guy from a local radio station, and he asked me if I ever thought about being in broadcasting. He said that I seemed to speak well, and I said, well, no, not really. I plan on playing football and going to school. And then I hurt my back and was off for a while, didn't play for a long time. And he gave me a number to call, a guy named Brian Stone, who was the news director at CFRW in Winnipeg. And I called him. I went in. Literally, they gave me 4 or 5 pieces of paper, sent me into a studio, said, read that. I did. They recorded. They had a meeting, called me in, and offered me a job. So I started doing overnight news in Winnipeg at CFRW for $750 a month. That was my first job in broadcasting. But I had no education. I just finished high school. I had
great opportunity though, right? It's a great opportunity, regardless of the pay. I mean, good opportunity, right? Right off.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a summer job at that point, so I thought this could be a good idea. And I was only there for about 2.5 months, and I got a job offer to go to London, Ontario. A guy named Al Gibson, was the news director, invited me to go to London as a newscaster and a news reporter. And it was double the salary. It was, more than double. It was, double. It was about $1,600 a month. So I packed up my Honda Civic and I went, and I didn't know anybody in London. I had no family, no friends, nothing. And so I packed up and went. And I was there for 2.5 years. And after the first year, the sports director is a relative term. There's only one guy in the sports department, so he was the sports director. His name was Rick Mueller, and he was going on a 6-month sabbatical to go somewhere and find himself and all that kind of stuff. So Al Gibson asked me if I would cover off doing sports while he was gone, because of the staff. I knew the most about sports, and so I said, yeah, sure, it doesn't matter to me. And then after, I think about 4 months, I guess Rick called back to the station and said, I'm not coming back. I've found myself. Anyway. So they asked me if I wanted to be the sports director. I said, yeah, sure. I said, yeah, that's fine. So I was the sports director. And then I got 2 job offers. I was there for 2.5 years, and I got 2 job offers in the same week. One was from CKNW in Windsor, which had the USFL rights to football, and they wanted me to come and work on the football broadcast. And the other one was from CFRA in Ottawa to come and be a sportscaster. Ernie Calcutt, the legendary Ernie Calcutt, had passed away. Dave Schreiber had gone to CKBY. So John Badham had come in to replace Ernie, and they needed another guy. So I was looking at the 2 offers, and basically I had family here in Ottawa. My uncle and aunt lived here. Actually 2 uncles and 2 aunts. And another guy that I worked with in London, Dean Roberts, was here working for CFRW as a disc jockey. And so they flew me in to look around the town and, pitch me. And I decided of the 2 offers, I decided to take the one to come to Ottawa, which was lucky because 6 months after that, the USFL folded and the station in Windsor turned into a music of your life station with no employees and just recorded music. So if I had taken that job, I would have been out of a job.
Yeah.
And so I came here and I started, when I started, I was doing reporting 3 days a week and doing weekend sports, because at that time the CFRA had a full sports package, including one of their biggest sportscasts of the week every Saturday and Sunday at noon, the Paris Taylor Sports Special, which was 15 minutes, which was at that time a big show. And I would also, my job was also to do the pregame show, the halftime show, and the postgame show on our Rough Rider football broadcasts.
That's fun.
It was great. It was absolutely great. After the first year, Jeff Courier left to go and do the Saskatchewan Roughriders play-by-play. So they moved me up to do color on the broadcast with John Badham. And then the next year, John Badham left to go to Toronto to be the Argos play-by-play guy. So they asked me if I wanted to do the play-by-play, and he was also the morning sportscaster. So basically, I think I was 23.
Wow, that's a lot for like a 23-year-old, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
So 23, I was the sports director of CFRA, the morning sports voice, and the voice of the Rough Riders.
Wow.
So I was doing okay.
Yeah, you were definitely working it quite a bit, huh?
Yeah, and all the stuff after that has just kind of trickled in. When I was doing the broadcast, the radio broadcast, when I was still doing football, John Shannon was a guy that the CFL hired way back when to start CFN, which was the Canadian Football Network. It only lasted a couple of years when the CFL thought they would have their own TV network. And so John hired me to basically just gather tape. I was never on the air. Basically, I would just do the interviews in Ottawa for whatever features or whatever stuff they had coming up in the halftime show, and I would feed all that stuff to Toronto and they would air it. But I was never actually on the air. I was just a gather stuff guy. And that's kind of how I met and got to know John Shannon. And then John and Shannon later became the executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years, and I was doing local TV here and doing the radio as well. And I was doing doing the games on the new RO when they were on the new RO. So I was doing radio and TV. And then John Shannon called me in 1998, I think, and said, so why don't you work for me? And I said, well, you've never asked me. And so he said, do you want to work for Hockey Night? I said, well, I have to ask my boss. So I asked my boss at the radio station, and he said, yeah, it'd be great for us to have a Hockey Night guy on staff. That'd be that's good for the station. I said,
for sure.
Great. So I called John back, and that was a Thursday. And he said, great. Your first game is Saturday in Montreal, Calgary and Montreal. And you'll be working. It'll be a 3-man booth. It'll be you, John Davidson, and Dick Irvin.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was my first Hockey Night game.
Yeah.
And then so I was doing at that time the local rights changed to Sportsnet, so I was doing some games on radio, some games on Sportsnet, and some games on Hockey Night.
Yeah.
And that went on for like, I don't know, 15 years. About 15 years I worked for Hockey Night. And then when the local rights here changed from Sportsnet to TSN already had 5 play-by-play guys. They didn't need me. So I had the option to stay with Rogers and Hockey Night, or just do exclusively radio. And the job they offered me at Sportsnet was to do the Montreal regional package and Saturday nights. And, I still had kids at home, kids in school.
Yeah.
And when they sent me the first mock schedule that I got, I think I had 2 games in Ottawa. Because for me, if I was going to take that job, my home games would be in Montreal.
That's rough. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just going to be too much travel. And so, when people ask me, what, did you really choose to leave TV? I said, yeah, just for me and for my life and for my family at that time, it was better for me to just go back to doing nothing but radio.
Do you think it would have been weird for you to call Montreal Canadian games after like 15, 20 years of being the voice of the Sanders? I mean, firstly, I'm glad that never happened. I don't want to see the parallel universe where it happened because that is wild. I can't imagine a Montreal Canadian goal with your call. So thankfully that's never happened. But what do you think that would have been like just if you would have taken that opportunity?
Wouldn't have been any different to me, to be honest with you. I don't change my call or my perspective based on what 2 teams are on the ice. When I was working for Hockey Night in Canada, I actually didn't do very many Ottawa games. I was always the guy they sent to do other places. As a matter of fact, in my 15 years at Hockey Night, I never did an Ottawa playoff series.
Really?
They always had me on some other series because, because Coley, or if it was when it was Toronto and Ottawa, that was the big crew. They had Houston or Cole or whoever it was, and so I was lower down in the pecking order at Hockey Night. So at Hockey Night, they didn't care where you were from. Everybody lived in different places. Bob lived in Newfoundland, for heaven's sake. So when Hockey Night was doing playoff series, they would have their meetings, not with us, but they would have their meetings and they would decide which is their A, B, C, and D series based on what the anticipated ratings are. So whatever series they thought was the A series, that's the one that Cole and Harry did, and the B. So, and I was always the D series because, on the pecking order, I was the lowest guy. So wherever that series was, that's where they would send me. And Ottawa being a Canadian team, Ottawa was never the D series. So like I said, in 15 years, I never did one Ottawa playoff series, on Hockey Night in Canada.
That's wild. Like I know you did that Washington-Boston series. You had that famous call, of course, Game 7 overtime.
Yep.
But that's wow. I didn't know that. That's actually pretty wild. So when you get the call the games, well, I want to speak about Gord Wilson and Potvin in just a second, but I just want to go on to this for a sec. So obviously getting to call the games now when the Sens make the playoffs, being with TSN 1200, how special is that to you? Because I mean, Dean, when that barn is in playoff mode, there's no arena like it in the NHL.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? For my job, it's kind of like, at least the way I have to do it, because it's the way my brain works.
Yeah,
it's not really an emotional. It's more a compartmentalized. In my brain, it's like bing, 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 and this comes next, and this comes next, and you call it. So it's not really. There's not that much emotion in it. But what gets me is I live here. This is, my kids live here. Like, my life is here. I've been here, for over. I came here in '84. This is my home. So I get wound up about how the community gets wound up. I get wound up about how my family gets wound up. I get wound up seeing how the fans are wound up. But it kind of separates when I'm doing my job. Yeah, because I can't do my job that way. It's kind of like a friend of mine who's a doctor was my doctor for a long time. He says it's kind of like in one way being a doctor. There's a reason why they don't let doctors operate on their family members. It's because emotion comes into it and you can't do your job. It's the same kind of thing when I'm calling the game. Do I want Ottawa to win? Absolutely, I want Ottawa to win. It's better for my city, better for my town, and it's better for me financially because Gord and I both are contract guys with the radio station. We get paid by the game. If there's more games, we get paid more. So I want them to go through 4 7-game series. So there is a personal interest in more games being played, but it doesn't change for me how I broadcast the games. It doesn't change for me how I call the goals. Like I do have people who get upset with me about how much energy I put into calling a non-Senator goal.
Don't listen to that.
And my answer is always the same. It's the way I was taught. A great play is a great play, no matter who makes it. Yep. And you shouldn't diminish, another player's great skill and great effort just because they're not an Ottawa Senator. And so when you asked me, if I was calling Montreal games, how I'd have been able to handle that, same way as when I walk in the booth, when I'm doing a Sportsnet game or a TSN game or a Hockey Night game, you do the game. And, and I think one of the things, Brandon, is, and I understand this, is that there's no way for me to ever change anyone's mind about how they feel about that.
Of course.
They feel a certain way about that, and there's nothing I can do to change it. I always recount a story, and it was years ago when Chris Phillips was still playing. There was a game that Chris Phillips played in, and he made a terrible gaffe in the corner, and a guy stole a puck from him, walked out, scored the game-winning goal. We called it and said what had, and then moved on. And after the game, you got to remember, this is the same game, same player, same play. And I got about the same number of people saying, Brown, you boot-licking homer, you're just disgusting. I can't believe how soft you were after that terrible play, just sucking up to Chris Phillips and the team, you hopeless bootlicker. And the other half of the people were, why are you being so hard on the local guy? For heaven's sakes, Chris Phillips is a great guy. Why are you ripping him like that? Now, two completely, totally different perspectives on the same player, the same play, and the same outcome. And the reality is, if someone has a predisposition where they think I'm a bootlicking homer, there's nothing I can say that's going to change their mind. And likewise, the people who believe that I'm too hard and I should be more supportive and more, more like a fan and, be always supportive and always a cheerleader for the team and the players, they have a different perspective, and there's no way I'm going to be able to convince them. So I just do what I do. I try to be fair and honest. I call what I see and interpret the way my brain works. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. but I'm always honest. No one of the many bosses I have had, Brandon, no one has ever told me not to say something or to say something or to quit doing this or quit doing that. Or what you see with me and with us is what you get. And it's not phony and it's not made up.
I think broadcasting is an art. And that might sound funny to some, but I think it really is, because you're painting a picture for people. Yeah, they're watching the game, but you're making it feel like they're there. They're a part of it. That's the whole point of broadcasting. So there's Homer broadcasts in the NHL that there's a famous example. I'm not going to say the team. I don't want to call out any broadcasting crew, but there's an example of when Hoffman scored a goal against his team, and just the reaction from the commentator. It's a great play. At least, put a little bit of enthusiasm into it. And it was just like monotone. Like it sucks the energy out of it. No matter what side you're on, it's a game at the end of the day. You want to be entertained. Yeah. So I'm glad that you didn't shift anyway. And more importantly, I'm glad no one had to tell you. I mean, there's a reason why in Ottawa, you're considered like a legend in the Sens area, because, you're just you and Gord do what you do,
Well, the one thing though, Brandon, that I have to say is, and I've never been in this position, so I don't really know what I would do when it's your mortgage and you got to feed your kids. Yeah. But for most of the teams I think all the teams in the United States and maybe 2 in Canada, the play-by-play announcer or the radio crew is employed by the team. They're part of the marketing wing of the team. We're very fortunate that we've always been employed by the radio station. Yeah. We answer to our bosses at the radio station. So, we're not under the same kind of pressure. But, I know of guys who do my job in the States. One in particular, there used to be a phone, one of those bat phones with no numbers on it. It just rings, has a red light. And the line went straight to the owner's corporate suite. Wow. And if the owner didn't like something that was said on the air, he would pick up the phone right in the middle of the game and tell the guys, I didn't like that. So, you're doing the game, every game, where the owner is molding how your reality. And I think, I have to be honest, I think that if I were in a situation where I was employed by the team I was calling, I think I would probably get fired pretty quickly. Because, it's a fast game, and you think something, you say it. Yeah, so sure. I wouldn't have any plan to get myself fired. I just think I would get fired because Gord and I say things, and like we have friends who listen to us, in other American cities, and they'll say to us, "Oh, we would never have said that. There's no way we." So Gord and I have been very, very lucky.
Well, speaking about
always work for people that want us to say what we think.
What's that relationship been like? Obviously working with Gord and Potvin too. You can speak about both of them. Obviously, 2, just legendary people in their own right. But just getting to work with them, how has that helped you? Built your love for the game and just the relationship there. It's obviously, it reminds me, you and Gord especially, and of course with Potvin too, back in the early 2010s. When you're watching baseball, it's like Dan Schulman and Buck Martinez or whatever, they're going back and forth. The back and forth. In hockey, you don't see that much, but with you and Gord and with Potvin, you do. And I think, once again, it's like the way I try to do things here is I speak to the camera, I speak to people watching the videos like you're getting a beer at a bar or whatever. And that's kind of what it's like with the game during, the breaks. And I love that, the banter, the back and forth. So what's the relationship through the years been like with, of course, Gord Wilson and, of course, Dennis Potvin?
Well, I worked with a lot more guys than just those 2. But with Gord, that's always been the constant thread. We started together. We did the first broadcast together. And even when I was doing more TV than radio, we still worked together every year, and we've been friends for a very long time. We worked football together before there was ever hockey. When I was doing the play-by-play, he was doing the field level stuff and the intermission or the halftime show and stuff like that. So, we've worked together for a long time. We're good friends. And so that's very easy because you don't have to work on a relationship. We have one. We've always had one. We understand each other. We like each other. We cover for each other. But I've been very lucky in that I've been fortunate that many, not all, but many of the people that I've worked with have been personal friends, and they were friends before we started working together. Like, Denny Potvin and I were friends before we ever started working together. Gary Galley and I were friends before we ever started working together. Greg Millen and I knew each other because he was doing TV here in Ottawa before I ever, I was doing the radio, but we saw each other all the time and we were friendly. We didn't hang out that much because he was doing TV and stuff like that, but it's not like we didn't know each other. There were some guys at Hockey Night in Canada that you got paired with where you didn't know them very well and, not the same kind of relationship, but I've been very fortunate to, work with a lot of really good people and a lot of really good guys. Harry Neal, when Harry was still doing the broadcast, I got to do some games with Harry, and that was, really exceptional. I forget which Olympics it was. I can't remember which Olympics. And so everybody of consequence is at the Olympics. So I was still doing stuff for Hockey Night then, and I was in Toronto doing a Montreal-Toronto game in Toronto with Harry Neal. Okay. And the only reason I'm there is because everybody else is at the Olympics, So Harry says to me, he said, you're only number 4. And I said, what? He says, you're only number 4. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, Dean, in the history of Hockey Night in Canada, there's only 4 guys who've called Saturday Toronto-Montreal games. Only 4. I said, wow. I forget who he said, Foster Hewitt and Danny Gallivan and anyway, Coley, I guess.
Of course.
Anyway, maybe it was 5. I can't. Anyway, I can't. It's Anyway, it was a long time ago.
Great class of people there.
Yeah, and I said, wow. He says, so all you got to do is not be the worst guy. I started laughing because, of course, all the other guys are about to go in the Hall of Fame or in the Hall of Fame. There's no way I can't be the worst guy to ever do this. So, but that, that was a kind of great sense of humor that he had. And so I loved Harry, and I see Harry all the time when we're in Buffalo because he still comes to the games, even though he's been long retired. So for me, the relationship with guys like Potvin or Galley or certainly Gord are different than most because, we were personal friends. And in the case of Gord, working forever together. So it made things not only easier, but made things very natural because we didn't change how we dealt with each other when we were on the air.
You have the chemistry there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's all a part of just being who you are on the air. Like I tell lots of young broadcasters, it's kind of like the golf thing, every golf pro will tell you, just be calm and just be balanced through the ball. Well, those words are really easy to say. Yeah. It's a very hard thing to do. And the same in broadcasting. I tell people all the time, the quicker in broadcasting you can get to yourself, the better you will be quicker. Because the hardest thing that most young broadcasters have a time doing is being themselves on the air.
Yeah.
They're always trying to be an amalgam of the guys that they admired coming up or what they think they're supposed to sound like or how they're supposed to be on the air. The quicker you can, in your career, the quicker you can get to being just you on the air, whatever that is, that's when you're going to get a lot better, a lot faster, because it is very normal, very natural, and very common that young broadcasters are in some way on the air performing what they think is the version of, I think anybody who listens to Gord and I for a long time have known for a long time that we are exactly ourselves on the air.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky that, I've always I've been very lucky to work for people over the course of my career who aren't bothered that my natural personality is not exactly the norm for broadcasting. I freely admit that I goof around a lot. I do non-traditional things a lot, and I get that. And I've been allowed to do it, and it's been great for me, great for my career, and from what my bosses tell me, it's been very good for the outlets that I've worked for, and they like it. So I've been lucky that way.
Yeah, that actually is a perfect segue into my next question because, there's a few trademark sayings from you like scramble and oh my heavens. I mean, where did those originate from? And clearly from what you just said, that was from you. So is it just kind of like on the spot where you come up with those type of things? Or is it like, what, if there's a massive scramble from the net, I'm just going to scream scramble and see how it works and if it sticks with the fans? How does that usually go for you?
Never thought about any of them. None of them were pre-planned ever.
I love that then. I love that.
I just don't have the ability, to be honest with you. Like I wouldn't be able to have like cue cards in front of me while I'm calling a game. It either pops into your brain or it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And I think like the scramble thing, has been like since a day one thing, and actually pre-day one, because when I was doing football, I would do the same thing with fumble.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
and what it is to be honest with you, it's a delay tactic. When you're on the air, if you elongate a scramble or a fumble, it gives you a couple of seconds to figure out where the ball or where the puck is.
Makes sense.
So like with scramble, I'm yelling scramble because everything's happening, but I just don't know who's got the puck or where it's going. So it's kind of a delay tactic. And to be honest with you, it was something that I picked up from one of my heroes in broadcasting, Keith Jackson. Keith Jackson, who used to do college football, I think on, I can't remember, ABC, CBS. Keith. Anyway, Keith Jackson would do the same thing with fumble in college football games, you know? And so it's just something that I started doing when I was doing football, and it just kind of translated into hockey, but there was no preset plan. There was no, you know, like there's some things that are scripted when I was on TV. When you have this much time at the top of the show, they want you to script things out so it comes a time, and then you can time out to the commercial break. But in the games,
It's different. Yeah.
doing the actual play-by-play, I don't have any ones that are pre-done, pre-thought out, pre-expected, because then you're looking for ways to get it in.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like when Steven Stamkos scored his 60th goal. That was a game in Winnipeg, and it was on Hockey Night, and that was at a time when Tampa Television didn't do all the games.
Yeah.
They didn't do that game. So the only TV call of Steven Stamkos' 60th goal was us. And so afterwards I was on Tampa radio because they called me to ask what what we're talking about. And all I said was, I can't remember exactly what all I said was, you know, I left a pause so that, you know, the dramatic effect comes up, and I said, Steven Stamkos, 60th goal or something like that.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to Tampa radio, one of the guys said, you know, down here, probably there would have been more. And I said, well, to be honest with you, I really didn't think about it at the time. But the one thing that I think about in those big moments is you don't need to hear me trying to do some kind of verbal gymnastics to come up with something clever.
Yes.
I scored 60 goals. That's all you need.
Yeah.
And then the pictures and the sound of what came after that. You don't need to hear me trying to make some rhyme or a pun or, you know, like. So for moments like that, I've always kind of thought that less is more. So, you know, I never thought about what I was going to say if he scored in that game, but all I knew was that I was going to try and be off it as quick as I could. So the pictures and the sound of him and that milestone was the point, not Dean Brown, idiot broadcaster going on and on and on about, well, you know, whatever. So that was kind of how that was. Very simple. Just the guy, his goal, and the number. And, you know.
You did something similar for Alfredsson's 400th goal as well. So, I mean, it's not even something just being in a different, it's just the way you do it. And it worked perfectly because you gave Gord Wilson a little bit of time to chime in there with a little bit of an audio piece too, and then you get the crowd. And I think the crowd is so important for those big moments because you get the excitement from the call, if you do it properly, which of course you always do. And then you get the crowd noise, you get the pictures, like you said. It's perfect because, you know, I don't know about anyone watching this, but when I see a big goal, I always love seeing the crowd reaction because it fires me up, just seeing how excited tens of thousands of people are. You know what I mean? And, you know, I have to ask, since the fumble turned into the scramble, do you remember the first time that just happened? Because, you know, was it just the first game, or do you remember the moment? Or
no, I you know, to be honest with you, I really don't. Again, you know, when you talk about compartmentalizing things in my brain. My father was a pilot, and it was kind of the same thing, you know, like he had his things to do, and that's the way. And my mind works the same way. Like we have guys, you know, sometimes one of the writers will run up into our booth because they're on deadline. They got to get something in. They can't wait for the league to, and somebody will run up and, you know, we'll hit the cough button. So our mics are dead. And he'll say, who got the second assist on the gun? Who shot the puck? And I go, I don't know. And they go, well, you just called it. I said, yeah, but once I call it, it's gone. I'm on to the next thing. My recall ability, like I wish that I had the recall ability of a Liam McGuire, guys like that, but I don't. Like with a lot of stuff, once I say it, it's gone. And when people sometimes recount my calls back to me, I go, okay, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I'm glad it made an impression on you. But you know, you remember those things more than I do, because for me, once it's done, I got to move on to the next thing. And so for me, I lose a lot of them. So sometimes, like I say, when people come up to me, I had a guy come up to me, and something I said on a goal he had tattooed on his arm.
Really? Wow.
And yeah. And he said, "You remember this?" And I said, "I actually don't. I'm sorry. I don't, So,
That's awesome.
and I think that really did, because obviously whatever it was important to him.
Yeah.
He got it tattooed on his arm. But
Yes.
for me, like, my mind moves on to what the next thing is,
Well, my moment from you, like scramble and stuff, I'll never forget it. It was against Arizona Coyotes. And for like 6 seconds straight, you just screamed scramble. And that's the moment that always sticks in my head. Of course, with all the classic scores, calls, but that scrambled right there against Coyotes. I just remember Mike Smith sprawling in the crease, and I can't say anything more about it. It was just something that's going to stick with me. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get a tattoo on my arm, but it will stay with me for quite some time.
I'm glad that stuck with you, because I don't remember it at all.
Hey, I'll send you the video after, though, so you can get a little bit of
all right.
remembrance of that. I want to move on now to a couple of things. The Sens have made some big offseason moves, as you know. How exciting is it for you to be able to call some superstars? We'll start with Claude Giroux, bringing the hometown kid back here for maybe his last few years in the National Hockey League. It's a massive moment for the franchise and for its future. How excited are you for Claude Giroux coming home? And more importantly, what do you think he can do for the franchise?
Well, I think in the case of Claude, there's a ton of things he can do for this franchise. I said this last year, when we were doing some pregame shows, when this really started to pick up some steam as a possibility. And I remember saying to Graham Creech on one of the pregame shows, I said, Graham, I said, forget all the other stuff. Forget, that he's one of the elite face-off guys in the league. Forget that he's still got lots left in the tank as far as being able to produce offense. Forget about the fact that you've got some great options now if you have him for your number one and number two power play units. Forget all that. Well, don't forget about it. But I said, what is the value to the franchise? If you could put a number on it, what is the value to the franchise if over at that time he hadn't signed a contract? And I said, if he signs a 2-year contract, what's the value to the franchise if in those 2 years he has those kids after practice every day working on faceoffs? And if he gets Norris and Pinto and Stützle, all those guys, those young guys, if they increase in the faceoff circle 5% in 2 years, all of them.
Yeah.
What is that worth to this team? Because if that were to happen, this team would be a top 5 faceoff team in the league.
Yeah.
With his standard numbers that he's always in the top 5.
Top 5, yeah.
Usually in the top 3. But if you get all 3 of those kids into the, up 5%, all of a sudden you're talking about 4 regular centers, or he wouldn't play center, he'd play right, but take faceoffs. But you'd get 4 of your best faceoff guys on one team, all above 50%. That would put you in the top 5 in this league. What's the value of that to puck possession? Like, you start looking about what that would do to your analytics and a lot of the metrics on this team as far as possession, offensive starts, offensive zone starts, stuff. So, and that's in addition to all the stuff that he brings as a player, but just as a mentor and a teacher, what would that be worth to this team? So I think when people look at what Claude Giroux can bring to this team, the points and the face-off percentage, the numbers, I think the advantage is so much greater than that because of the impact he can have on some of the younger players on this team, not in just telling them how to do it, but still being at the part of his career where he can actively do it.
Yeah.
It's not like a guy who used to be a 55% guy telling you how to take face-offs. Yeah. It is a current 55% guy taking face-offs, showing you how to do it, and telling you his little tricks and the things that he works on and his pre-scout of this guy and that guy that he's got to face up against. That's a different kind of scenario. And, I think, in addition to all the things he can bring in his game, what he can do to other players, the younger players' games, I think is a huge part of this.
I'm excited to see what he can do with Ridley Gregg and Shane Pinto at camp. I mean, right off what you just said, Pinto and Gregg, especially Pinto, he had fantastic numbers in NCAA in terms of faceoff percentage and point production too, but faceoff percentage, he was one of the better ones in NCAA, almost won the Hobie Baker Award as well. So, he's a fine player, has a chance to make the team this year. Same with Ridley Gregg. Now, we know he was injured the other day. We don't really know what's happening with that, but let's say he's healthy in the next few weeks for camp. Like you just said, Claude Giroux working with Pinto, working with Gregg, while, like you said, Giroux still in a time in his career where he's still a very productive, elite, I'd argue, NHL player. I mean, it's going to pay dividends on top of the fact it's going to be with Stützle, Norris, and helping these guys with their puck possession. What about Alex DeBrincat? I mean, this guy is Ottawa's pure sniper since, arguably Mike Hoffman, I guess, in recent memory, but like maybe one of the better snipers in team history. Multiple 40-goal scorer, massive for the team and their offensive output going into next year. What do you think about that addition?
Massive. I think when you use the word massive, I think I would agree with that. It's just, and one of the reasons is you just don't see 40-goal scorers become available in the marketplace. It happens so rarely, and it happens so rarely with a player his age. Now, obviously, this deal is going to get the full value of what this deal is. They are going to have to work on signing him to an extension, and that's going to happen. But he's going to be the one who decides if he signs it or not. But they've got him for a minimum of 2 years because he's a RFA at the end of this coming season, so they control where he goes. But ultimately, history will show the value of this deal. I think will be in whether they can get him signed or not to an extension, and I think that's really going to, for the most part, rely on his experience here in Ottawa. And if this team takes off, and he's a big part of that, in 2 years, this team would be, best case scenario, a contender for the Stanley Cup. You'd think that he might want to stick around for that. So that's going to be the ultimate telltale sign. But just on the immediate future, you look at him right now, and you look at what Ottawa can put up on the ice in a top six, and he is a keynote finisher. He's a guy that's already scored 40, 3 times in 5 years?
Believe so,
and, yeah. And if you look at his goals per game in the shortened COVID season, he would have been a 40-goal scorer in that season. So, and
he was close. He was in his mid-30s there. I mean, it was close still.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's a huge thing. It's kind of interesting. I just was doing a thing with Steve Warren that he's got coming out in Faces Magazine, a story that he's writing. Cool. And he was getting I don't know who else, but he's getting a couple of us guys to answer the same 3 questions. And the first question, I probably shouldn't tell this before he publishes it, but just it'll be in Faces Magazine, and me and whoever else asks.
They're great.
And check it out. Magazine. And Steve's first question was, what were the 3 biggest storylines this summer for the Ottawa Senators? And I said, number 1, getting Norris signed, so you don't have that dragging into training camp in the season. That's a huge check mark. Yeah. Number 2, Claude Giroux signing for all the reasons. And number 3, the LeBreton deal, because that's far more important in the arc of this franchise and the entire city. And right away, it's like, well, what about the signing of DeBrincat? I said, well, he would have been in my top 3. I don't know which one of the stories I'd have to bump out, but he would have been in my top 3 if he had an extension. Yeah. But it's not like he wasn't, good enough to be in the top 3 when you can only pick 3 things. But it's one of those things where until that gets decided one way or the other, and it's probably going to be, a year and a half before it does. But that's, for me, that's kind of how that stacked up. But still, that's in the future sometime. Right now, today, the top 6 on this team is, a couple of guys on, the NHL network were talking about this, and a couple of former players who were talking about this said, Ottawa has one of the best top 6s in the NHL now.
Easily. I can't disagree with that at all. It's absolutely right. And Leaf fans may hate that, but it's just the truth. I mean, and, when people are talking about DeBrincat coming here, people say, oh, well, he's not going to be playing with Patrick Kane anymore, blah, blah, blah. Well, Tim Stützle last year, with no offense to Brown and Formanton, they're fine players, but they're third-line players. He put up 60 points as a 20-year-old or 59 points as a 20-year-old with third-line guys. Imagine with a great puck possession guy and face-off guy like Giroux and a 40-plus, multiple 40-plus goal scorer on your wing going into next year. I mean, I could see Stützle getting 80-plus points on top of the fact that he's pretty dynamic, very similar in his style of play to Patrick Kane. And I have no doubt in my mind that Stützle will find ways to feed Alex DeBrincat. And on top of that, now I think it's too early. Like you kind of said, we'll have to wait a year and a half to see what happens with the contract extension. The good thing is, no matter what happens, frankly, the asking price for DeBrincat of what we had to give up was so low that even if we have to trade him in a year and a half, it was still successful because it was such a small price for such a great player. But what I will say is he's 23. He has a child now. Ottawa's a great city. So if he really loves it here, I think there's a really good chance because it's a safe city. It's a clean city for especially a new family. and he's young, especially. And this team is starting to really go into the next phase of their, rebuild to the next, we'll call it the contention phase. And he's kind of here at the right time. So the stars, like you said, can really align on DeBrincat extending here long term. But like you also said, we'll have to wait a year. But I do think there's a lot of optimism, I think, that should be around DeBrincat staying.
Yeah, I just noticed in the background behind you, you've got the Alfie and the Chris Phillips banners from the the jerseys being hung. I'm going to throw a little one-upsmanship on you. I'm here in my office at home. I'll just try and swing this around.
Oh man.
So now that one
Cool.
is obviously not the same size as the one that hangs in the CTC, but the company that made that one made these smaller size ones, made exactly the same fabric, same company, same everything. And the company gave one to me, to Gord Wilson, and Nick, who we emceed that night. And I have the Chris Phillips one, exactly the same one, in a different room. So that's awesome. If you're talking about Sens prized possessions, when people come into my office, they go, "Where'd you get that?" And I tell them the story that, no, it's basically a smaller version of the one that hangs there. Same company, same fabric, same everything.
That's beautiful. That is stunning. Can we see the wall one more time? I mean, sure. Let me see all the memorabilia. Let me see that. I got a few things. Look at that. Yeah, I think you might got the better backdrop there. I won't lie.
The Gretzky one, that was
his last game, right?
Last game in Ottawa, and it's actually sent to my son Connor, who was an infant and was at the game. Just got some stuff. There's a thing up on the wall there when I interviewed Jean Beliveau.
That's awesome. Look at that. That's such. And
there's a Denny Potvin jersey.
Yep.
Way in the back there. There's Roger Nielsen. That's done by Tony Harris, and obviously the one behind me is done by Tony Harris.
That's your office, eh?
Yep.
Beautiful, especially the logs that make up the walls. It's just beautiful.
Well, it's a log house, so you can't get away from logs in the walls.
Well, I'm jealous. I won't lie. Hopefully one day I could get to do the same thing. Now, I think when we're talking about off-season moves, and by the way, thank you for showing that. That was, this is kind of all I got for now. So hopefully sooner rather than later, I'll have
just build it, man. Just build it.
I can show a couple of things here if the fans don't mind. I have a funny story actually. If I could just find it for you real quick. Here it is. All right. So in 2014, Dean.
Yep.
You can see it here.
Oh yeah.
That's Chris Neal, Jared Cowan, but look at this guy right there. That is me.
Wow.
At 2014, the Sens Skills, it was in late December, and I won a contest with TSN1200 to be the junior reporter. Now, at that time, I was just starting Sens Talk. It was a year after. It was in 2014, so a year after I started it, so 9 years ago. The video is on YouTube, by the way. It's me interviewing Craig Anderson. It's really cool in front of like 15,000 people at the arena. Great experience. But that's not the best part of the day. The best part of the day is I have a real cool story with Chris Neal. So I was sitting on the bench, waiting for my opportunity to get up there. Very nervous, of course, but I'm sitting on that bench, waiting for my opportunity to get to interview Craig Anderson on the ice, like a dream come true. And I get a sharp kick to the back when I'm sitting on the bench. And I'm like, I was a feisty 14 or 13-year-old kid at the time. So, I turn around a little fierce-like. I was like, oh, what the hell was that? And then I turn around, it's Chris Neal. And I was, firstly, all the fierceness in me gone. I've seen Chris Neal play. I've seen him fight. There's going to be no pushback there. I smiled. He was like, my bad. And I realized at that moment that even at 13, 14, there's moments that are never going to leave you, and that's never going to leave me right there. So I had to pull out that picture there. I'll show it one more time. Just because you did, I had to show a little bit too. Now,
if you want, I can get Chris to kick you again. Here, I'll show you one more kind of cool thing.
Please don't, though. Please don't. That scared me once. Don't want it to scare me twice.
See in the bottom here?
Yeah, bottom right.
That is Gord and I in the broadcast booth at the old Chicago Stadium. Now, the reason we're doing that with our hands is because we are mimicking playing the organ. That was the first time we were in Chicago. And before we got there, in the old Chicago Stadium, it had the most powerful pipe organ in the world.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So we called, and because we wanted to interview somebody about the pipe organ for the pregame show, just kind of a cool, different thing. And so they said, yeah, you have to do this long in advance. So we did a couple of months, had to be on company letterhead. And they said, sure, yeah, we'll get it done. And the guy who plays it, Frank Pellico, who's also the organist with the Chicago Philharmonic, he's in there like at 5 o'clock to get ready for the game.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, we go up to where they have the organ, which basically was all encased in a cage. You weren't allowed to go and touch the organ.
Yeah.
Nobody plays the organ.
Spot. Yeah.
Yep. So Gord's doing the interview, and I'm just standing there. Gord, and all about the history of it and how power, like it had a governor on it, for example, because at full power, it would blow the windows out. So it had a governor on it. They could only take it to 70% power. And the reason they knew that is because they have blown the windows out before. So like, it's unbelievable. Anyway, so we're sitting there, and Gord's done the interview, and this guy's a great guy. Like, he really is a great guy.
Yeah.
And he said, you want to play it? We said, well, they told us like no one. He said, yeah, I know no one gets to touch the organ. I'm the guy. I'm the organ guy. He says, if I say you can touch the organ. And so, Gordon and I both go, yeah. But the thing is, neither of us can play, and neither one of us are musicians, but you're sitting there. Yeah. So I played chopsticks, and Gord played Delilah on the most powerful pipe organ in the world. So that picture is kind of us doing the, kind of to commemorate that night for us in Chicago. And it was so cool and so fantastic.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's the best part about being in this industry. I mean, 14 years old, you get memories. Like, it's the littlest things, and it's at the most unexpected times. You know what I mean? I'm sure when you did that interview, you weren't expecting to get to play on that, let alone get a, you know what I mean? So that's what I love about these type of, this type of job, being in this industry. Everyone has these little stories, and the more experienced you are, of course, like yourself, the more awesome those stories are. And I think that wall that you have there really shows that. And hopefully one day I can compete with it, and we can compare maybe in 15 years. I'll get back to you.
Well, I didn't even put it up, so I don't know. Like Sue's the one who does all this. Actually, she did my entire office.
She did a great job.
As a present to me while I was on the road a couple of years ago. I got home, and my office, all the furniture was changed. Everything was hung up. Stuff that I'd had stacked against a wall for years was all up on the wall. So I didn't even actually do it. So,
well, hey, you know what? Shout out to her then, because it looks really, really cool. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not just saying that. I'm being honest, because mine's a little, it looks fine here, but the way it's organized there looks pretty cool.
I'll let her know.
You please do. Before we move on to the last thing I want to discuss in terms of offseason, Cam Talbot. I can't overstate it enough. It's probably the biggest move they've made, frankly. Ottawa's tandem right now is the best since Bishop and Leonard and Anderson back about 10 years ago, like 2013. What do you think about that move and the tandem going forward into next year?
I don't think anyone's going to call it a superstar tandem, because both guys over the course of their career at different times have played well and played very well. And both at times have carried teams. Obviously Talbot a lot more than Forsberg. But I think for me, what it does is I think it has a very calming influence on the team, in that in the past couple of years, there's been such inconsistency with the goaltending.
Yes.
Matt Murray was great at sometimes and horrible at others, or not there at other times. And, Gustafsson as a young guy was great sometimes, terrible at others, or, just not there. So, it's been so inconsistent. I think that this has the possibility of being very calming for the team, because, you're not getting Carey Price here, but what you're likely to get is you're going to get consistent NHL caliber goaltending
100%
almost every night.
Yeah.
And that's generally what most teams want. They just want to know that those guys back there
give you a chance
can play to this level every day. Like, the best guys can play at this level every day and sometimes get up to here. And, the guys who play at this level, sometimes they can get up to here, but they can at least give you this all the time. And that's no small thing for a team to know that you're going to get a consistent level. You know what to expect out of that position, and that can be very calming for the rest of your team.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. Look, Talbot, for example, now Forsberg has had, like you said, some inconsistencies throughout his entire career. Last year, fantastic, season. He should be rewarded for that, of course. But with Cam Talbot, multiple times in his career, he's played 60 plus games in a year. He has longevity. And for a situation here like in Ottawa, where the goaltending position has often been, dealt a lot of injury blows, especially in the last 5 or 7 years, having a guy like Talbot who has played a lot of minutes, a lot of games quite often in his career, with another guy like Forsberg, who's coming off a career season on one of the worst defensive teams in the NHL last year, I mean, like I just said, or like you said, sorry, it's not a superstar tandem, but it's certainly a tandem that gives you a chance to win game in and game out. Now, I want to move on to the top four situation, just to hear what you have to say real quick, because I have something really interesting that I don't know a lot of people my age know about that I want to speak to you about. But for the top four situation, do you think Jacob Chychrun's a possibility? What do you think? Do you think Ottawa should pull the trigger on something like that, give a couple of first round picks, or should they give a promotion to a guy like Lassie Thompson or a JBD or even a Travis Hamonic?
Well, I think they're still involved. I don't know what you have to give, but to be honest with you, where Ottawa is right now, I wouldn't worry about draft picks. They have lots of picks. They have lots of prospects, more than they can use, more than will make this team. It wouldn't bother me if, as part of the deal, you're giving up 2 first-round draft picks if they feel like it's worth it. One thing I try to do is not pretend I'm a scout or a general manager. I do he shoots, he scores. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not going to second guess a coach. I'm not going to second guess a general manager. They're the ones who are going to have to live with it. But it seems to me that, there is a time to pull the trigger and use those draft picks that you have accumulated and use those prospects that you've developed. And now is that time to start doing that now. And they've already started doing that. And I applaud them for that. So you make any trade and someone's going to say, that's too much. That's too little. This guy's not that, so you can't worry about those things when you go to make the deals. And I know Pierre doesn't. Pierre has the ability to shut that stuff out, and to be a good GM, you have to be able to shut that stuff out because Twitter is not the way to run your team. And, I think we've seen that, it's one of those things where if you listen to too many outside voices, all of a sudden you're outside too, because you don't have a job anymore. So if that's what it takes, great. Of the guys who are on the verge of being NHLers, I think that Lassie Thompson is probably closer to that.
Agreed.
I know I saw the podcast you did with Bruce, and Bruce said that he thought that Lassie Thompson had moved ahead of JBD. He has, and that's nothing against JBD. Different players progress at different levels. JBD is behind Lassie Thompson on the depth chart. Just is. Doesn't make anybody a bad person. That's just the way it is. But when I look at where they are right now, I just look at it more in terms of roles. One of the things I think that gets frustrating when people talk to me, because they want an answer that's similar to what they think.
Yeah.
It's this guy's better than that guy, so how come that guy's playing? I said, well, and to me, it's like a hockey team is all about roles. And just because this guy, you think of him this way and he's better at producing offense than that guy, yeah, but that role is not an offensive role. That's a shutdown role. So, if you evaluate, especially with defensemen, if you evaluate them based on their points or what you believe their points are going to be, if they're supposed to be a point producing defenseman, then yeah, that's a fair metric. If the guy you're saying they should replace is a shutdown guy, then the number of points is irrelevant in the conversation. So, for example, when you have people last year come at you when you're on the pregame show, when a couple of times I said, well, Brandstrom is out and whoever is in, Nick Holden is in. Well, Brandstrom's got far more. Yeah, but the job they're trying to fill for that night is a shutdown role.
Yes.
And Nick Holden is a far better shutdown guy than Eric Brandstrom. Like, it's not a personal thing. I like Eric Brandstrom, great guy. Like, I do, but I have to, if you're asking me to evaluate what I see and what I think, it's more about roles.
Well, that's why, like Tyler Ennis, for example, I mean, when the top 9 was filled out at points last year, and Bruce Garriock, as you know, by the way, thank you for watching the interview the other day. I appreciate it a lot. But when Bruce was on the other day, he said that DJ Smith is a big believer and a backer of Tyler Ennis. But like you just said, if you don't have the role, you don't have the role. He's not going to be on the 4th line, Tyler Ennis. He's going to be on the 3rd, maybe 2nd line if there's that many holes. They're not going to put him on the 4th line. So when they scratched him and they had like Formanton on the 3rd line or Brown on the 3rd line and they shifted pieces around, Parker Kelly, whatever, fine, I get it. You can, once again, you need to have players in certain roles. Just like Cody Ceci a few years ago, he's clearly a fine NHLer. He was just not used properly here in Ottawa, and of course, it's not his fault. Of course, he's going to want to play more. It gives him an opportunity to make more money down the road, which he has. But as we've seen, especially since he's left Ottawa, in a different role, a 2nd, 3rd pairing role, he's a fine NHLer. It's when you thrust him to the 1st pairing or a shutdown role or penalty kill, whatever, a role that he's not suited for. You're not going to get the results that you're looking for. Obviously.
I just think that too often when people look at this and they hear catchwords from coaches like slotting. Slotting doesn't mean stats. Slotting means roles and chemistry. That's when a coach says, now that we got this guy back from injury, we get everybody in the right slots. Our slotting is the way it should be. That has nothing to do, by and large, with the player's stats. It has everything to do with chemistry with a partner or certain roles. Is this an offensive push skill thing? Is this a shutdown thing? So I think sometimes the comparisons used are not the same. Is not the same logic that a coach is using, and ultimately, that's the only scale to go by because they're the ones who decide. So it's fine. It's fine to, as a fan, to sit home and say, well, I would do this, or clearly this guy. And that's part of the fun of being a fan.
Sure. 100%.
But you shouldn't confuse it. You shouldn't confuse your logic with the actual logic that coaches use. Because to be honest with you, it's pretty universal. When people look at coaching decisions made here in Ottawa,
same thing's happening.
The coaching decisions in other cities with other teams are largely the same because a lot of coaches look at some things in very, very similar ways a lot of the time. So if you think there's these wild divergent, ideas about, well, as evidenced by the fact you can have a player join a team in the morning in a trade, and they can teach him enough stuff about his system that when he plays that night, he doesn't look like he doesn't know the system.
Yeah.
Because there are some common threads that run through almost every single system in the league. And so it's not as big as some people think it is. So I would just urge people when they're looking at that stuff, try to see the threads that run through coaching decisions, not just here, but other places, and have that be a part of your process as a fan, looking at why a coach may have done this, not just looking at the stats and go, this guy has more assists. Why isn't he? Well, that's not what the role is tonight.
I think that's for good and for bad. It's for good because, like you just said, there's an obvious reason as to why that's the case, but it's also for bad because sometimes players like a Tyler Ennis or at times last season, I can't think of a name, but when let's say a player, there are times where a player who should be inserted into the lineup on the third line is not, and you're going to have those disagreements. I just want to clarify. I don't think you and I are saying that that's not fine. I think that's fine. You're going to have coaching decisions where the player may fit in the role, but there might be a better player to play that role. That happens. There's always coach bias. And I just want to clarify, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact, hey, don't expect, Cody Ceci on the first pairing, if you like Cody Ceci, to play like Erik Karlsson is all we're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to move on now because when I had the Senators DJ Alex Marchand on about a year ago or so, really cool guy, he told me some interesting tidbits that I had to bring up today, which is like I told you at the beginning of this interview or before we started recording. Obviously, growing up, you were a role model, like an icon here in Ottawa, big inspiration to me for why I'm doing this. So when I had Alex Marchand on, this stuck with me and I had to ask you this question. We all know the famous power play, voiceover that you do at every single Sens game. I didn't know that per se. Now I do. If you didn't know that, now you do. The power play. That's actually Dean Brown, if you didn't know, at the Canadian Tire Center. But I was watching an old clip. I think it was not Victor Arvidsson, but Arvidsson had scored like early 2000s. Forget where, and we'll put the clip on the screen right now. But after the goal happens, the goal horn goes off. But before the song goes on, Blur 2, it's he shoots, he scores, he shoots, he scores, he shoots, he scores. And I don't know if you remember that, but that was you, of course. Your call of he shoots, he scores. Is there ever a chance that maybe you and the Sens do something like that again?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It's totally up to them. Like, I don't know how, 10 years ago.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know. They asked me, would you come in our studio and do the power play thing? I said, yeah, sure. What do I care? So I went into their studio and they said, we need a low growl. And I said, okay, so you drop it down and do a low growl. And they've used it for 10 years.
Yep.
I wasn't a part of any plans on how they're going to use it or when. And I've been in rinks where they've shared it with them. So I've been in visiting rinks and and I go, oh, well, there you go. But I have no idea when they've used my voice and cut it up to use in stuff in rink. They know I've told them I'm fine with that. I don't need any, I don't need any rights or anything. We don't have to sign anything. Anything that I do, you want to use it, just feel free and go ahead. So they may, but I have no idea. They just know that if they want to, I have no problem with it.
Well, this is an official petition to anyone in the Sens organization watching this right now. Let's bring that back. Carolina does it pretty cool. They have a unique thing in their goal song. Columbus, of course, with their the cannon. I'd love to see the he shoots, he scores come back. And once again, when you watch back this interview, Dean, you'll see the clip, or I'll send it to you after this. You'll understand what I'm saying. It really is cool, and it really adds to the atmosphere. So I really do hope that the Sens bring something like that back, because I think it'd be really awesome. Speaking of that, though, what's your favorite goal call over the years? You've covered a lot of big moments in Sens history. What's your favorite one?
That's a great question, because as I've already said, I forget most of them. The two that I remember the most, and maybe it's because they're brought up the most, but the two that I remember the most were Neil Brady's, because it was the first one. And Alfie's goal, the Buffalo goal, to get the team in. I think those are probably the two that I think of the most. I don't know, to be honest with you, whether those were two of my best or two. I have no idea, because I don't listen back to my own stuff. I don't hear myself.
Just move forward.
Yeah, so I don't know if I did those particularly well or not. They were just memorable to me because they were such emotional things for everybody else. Like it ignited the crowd, ignited the community. I think both were benchmark goals, but there's been lots of great goals. And the other thing too is there's been lots of really great, important Ottawa Senator goals that I didn't call. There's a lot of goals that Schreibs called, Dave Schreiber called, because Schreibs was filling in for me on radio when I'm off doing other things. So like people ask me about the do Shane goals. That wasn't me. That's Schreibs. I wasn't even there. Or people ask me about the playoff series in New York when Matt Cartner. I said, I was doing something somewhere else. I didn't even see the game. I have no idea what you're talking about. You know what I mean? There is stuff like that where a lot of important Senator goals, I didn't do it, but people think I did, But for me, probably those two are the ones that I get asked about the most and that I remember the most is the Alfie goal and the Neil Brady goal.
Now, before I ask you a few more questions, and I know I've had you here for a while, Dean, so I don't want to take
nothing going on. I got my hair cut this morning, so that's off the table. I'm free.
There you go. I think I might need one soon. The hair's getting a little long, but there you go. I'm not going to take the hat off right now. It's looking nice. There you go, Dean. There you go. I mean, we're letting the flow grow out for the hockey season here.
I just lost the flow this morning. I had one. I have a tan line now, though, from where the flow used to be.
That's actually funny. When I was in Israel the other 2-3 months ago, I used to wear my cap like this a lot. There was a tanning line. So I feel you on that. But I do want to ask you, you've done in the past from time to time, filled in on the occasional Senators regional TV broadcast. Now, obviously, you have been on radio for a while. There's a reason why you're there. Like you said, there's 4 or 5 broadcasters that TSN already has. But, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this. And I think a lot of Sens fans would agree with this. We're blessed to have Gordon Miller, John Ammett, some great, great commentators covering the Sens. But is there ever a chance that we get to see Dean Brown back on TV?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. I don't know. The only times I've done it where I've switched booths is when Gord Miller got sick. So I just hopped over a booth and just did the game. And, but for me, when I agreed to this deal, which was, this is the second, the first deal was 7 years. And then last year I agreed to a 5-year extension. So I got 4 years left in that agreement. My boss, Richard Gray at Bell Media here in Ottawa, he controls where I go. And that's one of the things that was a trade-off for me. And I'm happy with it. I don't need to be on TV to be a happy guy. I have a fantastic job that I love doing.
For sure.
And if they want me to do a couple of games on TV, I'd be more than happy to do it. Whatever they want me to do, I'm happy to do it. But it's really their decision. I do not sit at home and pine for my days on TV. It doesn't matter to me. My job is largely the same.
Yeah.
People say, well, you don't have to dress up. I tell them, I said, the same suits I wore on TV, I wear to do radio. I just believe you should dress up to go, The NHL is a suit and tie game. So I said, I wear exactly the same clothes on radio
as you should,
that I wore on TV. The only difference now is I have to pay for them. When you're on TV, they buy the suits for you. But so I may do some TV games if they want me to, but I am not searching it out. I have never asked to do any. I am very happy where I am, what I'm doing. And if they need me to help out doing something on TV, I would absolutely say yes. But I don't care one way or the other if I do or don't ever do another TV game.
Well, luckily the door's still open. We love to hear that. And I'm looking forward to the next random game where you're covering it. Because I remember, was it against Minnesota? I forget, but a couple of years back, you did a random game or Detroit or something. And I think it was Detroit actually. But yeah, it's just nice to hear you, because obviously when you listen to iHeartRadio, it's sometimes delayed. It's tough to time it with the TV. So it's just nice to hear you on the TV. So hopefully one day that'll happen again. Otherwise, I'll just have to listen to TSN 1200 more, which I do. Just saying. Now, I do want to ask this. You've said some great stories already. Do you have a few more for us? What's some really notable stories from your career?
Wow. I don't know. I have a million, but I don't sit there and catalog. Stories usually come up when we're talking about something that leads. Yeah, and it leads me to go, there was a this, there was a we're very fortunate in that most of the really fun stories don't revolve around hockey. It revolves around the hockey life. You're out doing something and you bump into this person, you meet that person, and all the people that you've come in contact with just arbitrarily. Vanna White, met Vanna White twice actually, and when I was still doing football, we were in Regina for a game. And I guess Vanna used to do this thing where she would go to fairs to make extra money. Who knows? I have no idea. And she would do this little show, I guess, based on the TV show she's on. Anyway, when we were in Saskatchewan for the football game, it was the same time that AgriFest was on, which is the big fair in Regina. And I guess she was in town. So riding up in the elevator, I'm going up to my room and I got my key, and elevator door opens. Her and three guys get on. Her people get on. Yeah. So, you're kind of nodding, and nice to see you. I know who she is, and she knows that everybody knows who she is. So just nod.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, not saying anything, but just And then my floor comes up, door opens. She and her little entourage get out. I get out, and we're walking down the hallway, and gets to what she thinks is a room and puts the key in, and it won't work. And then she gives the key to one of her guys, puts it in. It doesn't work, and I say, Vanna, the problem might be that that's my room. She goes, sorry. I said, no need to say sorry. I said, just, I think you're probably further down in one of the suites at the end or something, but you're right. Anyway, so she goes, and that's it. That's the extent of the interaction. That's it.
Cool story though.
Yeah, but that's the beginning of the story.
Oh.
So a couple of years later, we're in Boston, back in the Boston Garden, and we're going in for a day game, and they had been in there shooting Wheel of Fortune in the morning.
No way.
And so,
in Canada.
What's that?
In Canada?
No, in the Boston Garden.
Oh, okay. I thought you were okay.
So we're walking into the Boston Garden 2 hours before the game. They're all milling around because they just finished shooting this thing. So we're coming in, and I lean over to Gord and I said, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, there's Vanna White again." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "It's like she's stalking me, Gord." I said, "What are you talking about?" So I said, "Well, just watch." So we're walking up to them, and I see her, she sees me, and you can tell she's got this face where she knows she's met me, but doesn't know where. So as we get close, I just say, "Hey, Vanna, how's it going?" She goes, Good. How are you?" I said, "Oh, good. We're just sitting for the game. You guys shooting?" She goes, "Yeah, we're just shooting." I said, "No, great. Good to see you again. And, good luck. If you guys are here for the rest of the week, good luck with all your shoots." She said, "Yeah, great. Good. Yeah, good to see you again." Good. We're walking away. Gord said, "How the heck do you know Vanna White?" I said, "Gord, I don't know Vanna White. You're just relying on the fact that she might remember she met you once, and then you pretend that you actually know her. And she's too polite to go, 'Do I know you?'" So, and then a couple of years later, I did the same thing when I was in Hawaii. In Los Angeles every year, there's a big hockey game, charity hockey game, the NHL Stars against the Hollywood Stars.
Did Justin Bieber play in that once? I remember Will Ferrell or whatever. Yeah.
And what's his name? He's a goalie, John Wick. He plays in that. So anyway. So
Keanu Reeves. Yeah.
Keanu Reeves. Yeah. So anyway, and we're in LA, and it's the day before the game. So Ottawa's practicing. They're practicing after the Hollywood Stars get off the ice because they're having a practice. And we're talking to the guy who's the media relations guy for the LA Kings, Rich Nairn, because the LA Kings aren't technically part of it, but they're part of it. They organize this. So, and we're talking to him because Gord wants to see if he can interview Keanu Reeves for our pregame show. And they lined that up. Anyway, as we're standing there just talking, Chuck Woolery, this guy who's a game show host, used to do the show called The Love Connection. He's standing there, and Rich, because he's a good guy, introduces all of us, and he's just getting the fine points down about what the show is going to be. And we're standing there and we're chit-chatting and blah, blah, blah. And he goes away. We go in. Gord interviews Keanu Reeves in the locker room. It's fantastic.
That's so cool.
Then in the summertime, I'm in Hawaii. There's two couples we went, and I'm playing golf at Kapalua with my buddy Horst Buelow, the former ski jumper. And Horsty and I are playing golf at Kapalua, and we get out of our cart. We got to go up to the pro shop to register. I can see in the distance that Chuck Woolery is standing beside his cart talking to whoever he's playing with. And I did the same thing to Horst. Said, "Oh, for God's sakes, there's Chuck Woolery. I can't get this guy off my leg. Everywhere I go, Chuck is going, what are you talking about?" He said, "That's like the Love Connection guy." I said, "Yeah, I know. And so we walk up, and the same thing. Chuck sees me and knows that he's seen my foot. I go, "Hey, Chuck, how's it going?" He goes, "Hey, good. You guys playing?" I said, "Yeah, no, we just finished." "How'd you shoot?" "Oh, not bad." I said, "Yeah, we're just going out now. We got to get in the pro shop. Listen, Chuck, great to see you again. And I hope you have a great day. And, we're really looking forward to seeing you again." He said, "Yeah, you too. Good to see you again." We keep walking. Horst goes, "How the hell do you know Chuck Woolery?" I go, "I don't really know." So anyway, those are just two that kind of are the same, but, that kind of non-hockey kind of thing.
Well, firstly, those are big TV personalities. Now, a little bit before my time. But I am lucky enough to know them. My grandparents definitely have watched, and my parents definitely have watched Wheel of Fortune stuff. So I know how big a deal that is. That's pretty cool. And more importantly, I like the way you nonchalantly just, spoke to them. I think that's pretty awesome. I know a lot of people out there are probably fanboy, whatever you want to call it, "Hey, can I have a selfie?" Whatever, you know what I mean? Now I do want to ask, we've spoken about memorable moments off the ice. What about, on the ice with players? What are some cool moments you've had with players when interviewing them? Because obviously Daniel Alfredsson, he always said how he felt. There's no doubt about that. So I'm sure that's one of them. But, working with the team forever, like you said at the beginning, of course, with CFRA, you have a lot of candidates, I'm sure, there. So just wondering.
Well, not as many as you would think, because to be quite honest with you, as a play-by-play guy, I don't do many interviews. I'm not the guy that does the interview. Like on a lot of the TV broadcasts, you'll do the little 2-question one with the headset on, but that's really not all that in depth. I think for me, the stuff that's interesting are the guys that are not cliche, the guys that are, Tom Barrasso was a cool interview because he absolutely hated doing them, and he hated the people asking him the questions. So, I've never seen a guy who, when he's in a scrum, look over top of everybody, wouldn't look at anybody, and his answers were always just crap because he didn't want to do it, and he thought he was better than all this. And so you watch him because it's very rare that you see that kind of abject arrogance over and over and over again. So it was interesting to watch because it is rare. I think just on an everyday basis, the guys you like listening to are the guys like Alfie, who don't give you cookie cutter answers.
Yes.
Brady is like that. Mark Borowiecki is like that.
Definitely.
So I think those are the guys that probably are the ones that you enjoy being around the most when they're being interviewed, because you're going to get something real. Yeah. The awkward thing for me, and I think for the guys, that interview people, that are reporters who, like the guys who do between period stuff, and, what Claire Hanna does for TSN and what Wally did before that, on the TSN broadcast, that's a thing that sometimes I always found awkward with the guys I know the best, because, well, the guys I know the best, we would never talk to each other that way if the camera wasn't on. There would be casual terms that we use with each other in our conversation, like you do with your buddies, that you wouldn't say on the air. I
can't swear or whatever. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm like everybody else. Sometimes, you're using flowery language just in casual conversation. So it always felt weird having conversations with people you knew well, and doing an interview and almost pretending like you don't know each other when you know each other really well. I was I can't tell you who, but one time I had to interview a general manager who I know, not Ottawa's general manager, but another general manager in the league who I know very well. Okay. And we're doing this interview, and after it's over, he looks at me and he said, "That was tough." I said, "You know what?" I said, the whole time I'm interviewing you, I remember the time during football season when you were home from college where you were hammered and passed out on the rug in my condo. So, you know what I mean? Like, so I always found those ones to be difficult when you have a personal relationship with somebody, but you're an NHL broadcaster and he's an NHL GM, and that is not going to be a part of the interview.
Definitely not.
But that was, you know, the beginning of my relationship with him had nothing to do with hockey. It was through another friend. And then he ended up working in hockey, and I ended up being a hockey broadcaster. But those are the ones that I always found. And I've always wondered with the people that in our business who do those interviews, if they feel the same way when they're interviewing people that they know well, you know, not in an interview situation.
I'll say this. I think you might be able to agree with me on this, but the future of media and journalism and the content that we're putting out, it's much more like that. Much more like I said, like sitting down, having a beer with your buddy or whoever at the bar. That's kind of like the way even the mainstream stuff now too on Sportsnet, TSN, they're starting to shift towards that idea too. And I think it's because it's so attractive to any generation, all the demographics, but especially my demographic, because, you know, I think, especially compared to other generations, much more flashy, flamboyant. We're not afraid to say how we feel, less professional, I guess you can call it. You know what I mean? Yep. More like ourselves. And that's also, it's good, it's bad. There's good and bad in anything, of course. Yep. But I think the good in it is you're going to get much more entertaining type of content. You can still be a professional journalist and ask the tough questions while having a good time and making it, you know, exciting and fun to watch. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's still professional and you're asking the tough questions and you aren't, you know, being like, you know, too buddy. You have to have that line. But I'm glad to see the line shifting a little bit now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me too. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that, you know, it all revolves around the players or your interview subject, whether it's not a player, you know, whoever it is, but your interview subject has to be willing to engage in those kinds of conversations. And I think the great thing about new media is that this is what this generation of players has grown up on.
Yes,
it's not something new or different. It's there every day. So they feel more casual. They feel more connected to this than traditional lights, camera, action, stand-up interview, which feels very formal to them. So, you know, players on podcasts and players doing new media, I think, are far more open about a lot of things than they have been with traditional media, because this is more the venue that they've grown up with. It's more natural to them. What I think is going to happen, and what is going to, you know, begin to morph podcasting and a lot of, you know, new media is going to be and it's impossible for it not to, it's just the natural progression. But, you know, traditional media, you have to adhere to certain things because there are laws. And thus far, there have only been a few challenges to social media or to, you know, Twitter, TikTok, you know, podcasts about libel, slander, defamation. And I think one of the things that's going to really abruptly change some things is a couple of guys who, you know, just think they're shooting the poop on the air and talking to this, and I heard this and I heard that. Well, you know, if you're in court, I heard this is not a defense for something. And I think that once that happens, where there's a couple of big lawsuits, I think that might slow down a little bit of the Wild West that you can see sometimes on podcasts. And some people think that's a shame and some people won't. You can't just say whatever you want. It has to be true and you have to be able to prove it. And I think that's one of the buffers between traditional media and new media that is getting closer. And the more it gets close, the worse it is for new media, because, you know, part of the fun, I think, that I have in watching a lot of the new media and watching a lot of guys of your generation is they're willing to say things and do things that we can't, because either they don't care about the laws, or they've made the calculation to think it's highly unlikely they'll get sued, or they just don't know, or they just don't care. Either way, it's fun as a viewer, but I'm not the one who's going to end up getting sued for defamation, you know, because I said something, you know.
I think,
and I think that's going to start. I think you may remember when Brian Burke successfully sued some guys on Twitter because they were talking about something in his personal life that ended up being absolutely incorrect, and he sued and won. And I think that kind of sent a chill through Twitter for a while, but now most people have forgotten it even happened.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know that. I'm definitely going to look into that after the interview, because that's something really interesting. I think it's like this. I mean, for somebody like me I just graduated from Ottawa University as a journalist student. So, you know, I think I'm a journalist at this point. I've been doing it for 10 years. I graduated. I like to think I'm a journalist. But there's also people that do podcasting and stuff just for fun. And I think that's where we have to realize that not everyone doing podcasting is journalism. So that's where, like you said, you kind of get into the waters and the legal stuff and the ramifications. And, individual choice has individual consequence, right? And that will always be the case. And I think that's why when we have we live in a society of law and order, we have rules, we have this, we have that. If you did something really wrong, more often than not, you will be caught on it, you will be called out on it, and you will be corrected on it. So I think in a market sense, we're going to be okay, just because people these days have way more ways of telling you you're wrong than ever before. And more importantly,
and they're determined to tell you.
Yeah, and especially on Twitter, which is fine. That's great, because sometimes when you're wrong, you need to hear it, because you don't want to get ignorant in your wrong opinion. But it's great that we have good debate. Sometimes you have, and we're not going to get into politics. That's fine. We don't have to get into that. My point is, though, you want to have good debate, and I think I see a lot of that, and I think that's the good thing about these podcasts. It's really starting to have debate from all sides. And I think when you have that ability, it's great and bad at times, but it's great because when they're speaking about the truth and when they're speaking about things they believe in, and even if you disagree with it, if it's backed up by facts, I think it's a beautiful thing that people are getting involved in our political system, getting involved in politics, getting involved in our society. That a lot of things in the past have happened because people didn't. So it's good that things are, people are getting more involved, and that's how democracy works. Now, I have a couple more questions for you.
Can I just say one more thing about what you just said?
Go ahead, for sure.
I think for me personally, and I don't know what the actual determination is about if there's a standard, it's journalism if it's this or it's not if it's, for me, as someone who just consumes them and enjoys some and don't bother with others, unlike anybody else, I listen to a podcast, and if I kind of like it, then I keep listening. If I don't, I don't. Like I'm like everybody else. For me, though, to consider something to be journalistic, to me, it's about access. If for whatever reason, you have access to, in the case of hockey, players, coaches, managers, to be able to ask firsthand questions and get firsthand answers. And to have,
which I have. I'm credentialed.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm not saying you're not a journalist.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that the people who call themselves a journalist, but like you said, just do a podcast for fun, and they think they're the same as someone who does this every day professionally and has conversations both on and off the record with actual people that are actually in the league as players, coaches, managers, owners. You're not the same. And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you're smarter. It just means that you have access. And so, I've gotten in arguments with people before who say, well, like, why are you putting down this guy? So I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying that we can't have a conversation as equals because I know more, and I know more, not because I'm smarter. I have the benefit of being able to have firsthand conversations. And you can't have the same knowledge base because you don't have those conversations. When you do, then we can. But that, to me, that's the biggest difference. It's not a talent difference. It's not an intelligence difference. No. It's simply access. And in your case and a couple of other guys, people get great access, and you can put out a great product like what you do, what Wally and Meth do. You look at the Dregs, the Ray and Dregs, all the guys who get access. That's where you're going to get real answers to real questions, not suppositions that someone, well, I'm a smart guy, so I suppose this, so that's a fact. No, that's not how facts become facts.
Well, that's exactly what my point was. I completely agree, because I think we need to, obviously you don't want to have just people spouting lies. Like, you don't want to have somebody on a podcast saying the Holocaust didn't happen, for example. Yeah. Obviously, we don't want that. But I think it's important to differentiate the two between a podcaster and a journalist, like you just said. When you're a journalist, you are expected, and I learned this, and this, double, triple, quadruple. Make sure your source is right with multiple sources. I don't report anything, and I want to say this for people watching this. I've reported in the past things on potential moves Ottawa's made. I've broken stories even in the past, like the 2D logo thing. But I didn't do that without asking at least two sources, because I hear stuff all the time from one source, but that's hearsay. Who's to say that they're not being misled by somebody else? You need to always have two sources. Like you just said, if you're a journalist, you always will have that access to getting different sources. So with a podcaster, I mean, they are as smart, as creative, or whatever as a journalist, no problem. The difference is, however, they just don't have the access yet. I was like that at one point. You keep on building, you will get there. I promise you, as long as you keep on going at it. But the point is, the people we need to hold accountable, of course, are journalists who we entrust to give us the truth and give us the facts. Now, I have a couple more questions I have to ask you. Firstly, our producer, but Alex Allard, I know you know who he is. He is very well known in the sports industry. Huge get for us. I'm really fired up to have him on our team. It's truly an honor to have him in our production team. But he asked me to ask you about Blair Tetreault. He unfortunately passed away about a year ago, but he is a legend. Alex Allard, our producer, asked me to ask you about it, and I had to ask. So if you have any stories about him or anything you wanted to say.
Well, Blair Tetreault was one of the guys, works in the truck, director primarily, but he could do anything. Some games he produced. Sometimes he was a switcher. I don't think there was a job in the truck that he couldn't do. And one of the things with Blair was not only that he was just unbelievable at his job, is that he was one of the guys that understood that a lot of people helped him and a lot of people trained him. It wasn't just what you learned in school to get the job. It's what you learned from the people in the business while you did the job that made you one of the best guys. It's not just your work ethic. It's not just your smarts. It's a whole bunch of other things. And Blair was one of those guys who was at the top of the class, not just in Canada, in the industry. Blair did a lot of freelance work, all over the world in a lot of different situations, not just hockey, because he was exceptional at what he did. But I think for me, Blair was always a guy that was so supportive, a guy that was always positive, and a guy that always took the time to help out the young guys in the truck, in the booth, or, wherever. And sometimes you don't see as many of those guys in the business as you'd like. Some guys go in, do their job, and they look at it as not my job to be somebody else's teacher. My job is to do my job. But the thing is that all of us had people help us on the way up. So do you want to be one of those helpers to somebody else? And maybe it's just because Blair and I got along so well, because we both kind of grew up with the same kind of mentality that, it's part of your job to help the next generation get a job, or, get to the place where they have enough skills to get a job, and be honest with them and be frank with them, but don't tear them down, and don't be so negative that you hurt them. Try and find a way to tell them what they need to hear, but do it in a way where they're going to get something positive out of that. And Blair was always like that. And Blair was just one of those guys, like, crews going out for dinner on the road is a very regular thing. And Blair was always one of those guys who had some great stories, but he was never the focus of the story. It was always about somebody else that was funny. Somebody else did this. He knew all the stories, but he never told stories about himself. He's a very, very humble guy. And it was a very, very painful time for all of us when he passed away so suddenly. And the other part of it was we all felt so deeply because of his son, Scotty, who works in the business. And, we all know Scotty. And so, you know that what the family's going through, and you know what you're going through. So it was a very painful time to lose not just a great professional, but more importantly, an absolutely superb human being. And that was not a good time. That was a bad time.
I appreciate Alex Allard for shining light on that incredible person. Obviously, as somebody like myself, just trying to get into the industry, I didn't get the pleasure of meeting him, but I'm glad that we got to speak about him briefly on here, at least shed light on, because look, in the sports industry, most people only think about the players, but there's so much. The more you go back, there's so much. And people like that, there's so many people like that. And I always try to shed as much light as possible on people in the background that really make everything happen, make it a reality. So thank you for that. And I appreciate it. My last question for you, because I think we've been going on now for an hour and a half, and I'm sure you want to get to your dogs. And speaking of the dogs, I was doing some research, and, I've been following you for a while. I've said it many times. Huge fan of yours, Dean. I don't have to say it enough. I think it's been pretty clear. I think it's been pretty clear. But your dogs are beautiful. I have a dog of my own, a dog called Brady, a golden doodle, but you have a couple of beautiful puppies. And there's a picture that always resonates with me. I remember this picture. I don't know if it was a few years ago or not, but it must have been 2019, 2020 when the Sanders got the rookie pup or whatever. Yep. I remember you tweeted out a picture. It was so cute. It was the news, whatever channel. It was the news with the Senators rookie puppy on, and it was your two pups looking at the screen. And I remember I think I wrote it down here. Yeah, you wrote that hopefully one day that your puppies get to meet the Sens rookie pup. Now, I think the perfect way to wrap this up, because we know all Sens fans know you love your dogs.
Yes.
Did your dogs get to meet the Sens rookie puppy?
They did not get to meet Rookie. Wish they could have, but Mike, who had Rookie, was taking him through his training, and there was a couple of times where we nearly got together for play dates, but Rookie actually had a pretty decent schedule in preparation for becoming a guide dog, which he is now. But if they ever get another one, and I know that Mike would like to get another one, Mike Kelly is the guy with the Senators who basically did the training.
Yeah.
And I know they still have a great relationship with the CNIB, and they'd love to do it again. But if they get another one, really going to try to make that happen. We've had a bit of a change. We still have two Noofs, but at the time we had two Noofs, and in January we lost our big boy Bruce.
Sorry,
he passed away. Yeah, he had an aneurysm and passed away. So we still have Judy, our female. She's 9 years old, and we have our new puppy, who's a Landseer Newfoundland, and that's Trevor, and he's only 7 months old. So he's got lots of energy. But I think one of the reasons people really gravitate to them is because of the size. It's just not often.
Fluffy,
Bruce, well, Bruce was 210 pounds, so people don't see too many 200-pound dogs. So gravitate. Judy at the time I think was 135 pounds, which is really light for the breed. And Trevor right now is 7 months old, and he's 100 pounds. He's 7 months old, so his father's 200 pounds, so he's probably going to be close to that. So when you see big dogs, people kind of gravitate to that. And also anybody that knows the breed knows that they just love people. So kids come running up to them and hug them and stuff like that. It's kind of a cool thing.
Well, I have to ask, do you think there's a good chance that the Senators get another rookie puppy then?
I know there's a desire to. But the other thing that has to be taken into account that sometimes people don't realize, it has to be somebody within the organization to take the responsibility.
For sure.
Like
you
Mike
can't
did
just
last
have.
time.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, the things in any office, not just theirs, and I don't know if this is the case in Ottawa, it may be, I'm not sure. It's a difficult situation because you have to bring the dogs to work with you to acclimatize them and be around.
Yeah.
If you have anybody in the office, because Mike has an office job there. Mike is one of the graphics guys, so he's in an office. If there's anybody in the office that's allergic to dogs, you can't put a dog in the office setting if someone's allergic to dogs. So it isn't just as simple as get a dog, get a puppy, let them bring them up, take the pictures. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into it. First and foremost is you have to have somebody who's willing to devote their personal time to do it, because you're taking that puppy home with you at the end of each day and doing all the training for the CNIB to get them ready to see if they're going to be guide dogs. So it's a huge commitment. And you also have to, be in a situation where the dog can cohabitate in the office with everybody in the office, not just one person.
Well, I think that's a great way to leave it off. Always love talking about puppies. We know you love dogs. I think, I know we know you do. They're beautiful dogs. I didn't know they were that heavy though. 200 plus pounds. That is. Can I ask how long did it take until you weren't able to pick them up like puppies anymore? Because 100 pounds or 100 whatever at 7 months is crazy.
Well, it goes by pretty quick. Of all the giant breeds, and listed in the giant breeds are like Newfs, Pyrenees, St. Bernards, Mastiffs. Those are all considered the giant breeds. The Newfs is one of the breeds that gets to full size the quickest. Like Bruce, for example, was 165 pounds at 10 months. So he was kind of out of the lifting category pretty early, because it's not just the weight. They don't like to be picked up. So he was hard to pick up, because if he thought he was being picked up, he'd start to wriggle. Well, if you got 165, it's like trying to lift up a 165-pound guy that doesn't want to be lifted up. It's not that easy. So they're out of that puppy stage pretty quick. Well, like I say, Trevor is 7 months old now, and he's 100 pounds. So he's kind of already out of the lifting stage now as it is. Unless you really want, I can pick him up if I want to, but he doesn't like it.
Well, Dean, you know what? Maybe one day we'll have to try that. See if you versus me, who can pick up the dog. If they're willing, though, of course. We'll have to give them a lot of treats just before, or a nice bone. But we'll have to speak to you again soon, Dean, hopefully during the season. It was an absolute pleasure. This was probably the longest interview and episode we're ever going to put out on Sens Talk, but it was worth it because it was an awesome time to speak to you. Where can everyone follow your stuff?
I'm on Twitter. I don't know what I am on Twitter. What am I?
I think you're like PXP Ottawa or Dean
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
We'll
That's
put it
the
on the
only
screen.
social-
It'll be on the screen here. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
that's the only social media. I don't TikTok. I'm pretty sure I'm on Instagram, but I never post anything. I'm old, like.
Should
to
get
be
on
honest with
TikTok,
you-
Dean. Should get
No,
on
I
TikTok.
don't. Yeah,
Do the
I'm
dances
not,
or whatever.
I'm not on TikTok. Not a good dancer. And to be honest with you, the only reason I'm on Twitter is because we pretty much have to be in our business. We get all our information about press conferences and
Yes.
stuff from the teams through Twitter and from the league. So you really can't be working in the NHL if you're not on Twitter. So it's really not a choice. But yeah, that's pretty much the only social media I'm on. Well, I'm on Facebook, but that's only for my family and friends. I don't do anything professional. That's just to keep up with everyone's kids and stuff.
We'll put the Twitter there. Make sure to follow him for Sens stuff, and of course, the occasional Newfoundland beautiful dog picture. Besides
Absolutely.
that, Dean, pleasure as always. Thank you so much for taking a lot of time to speak to us, and I look forward to speaking soon. Thank you.
Well, Brandon, thank you very much. And anytime you need me, just give me a call.